This story will take us down a rabbit hole of small town corruption that leads to a sinister ending, with 3 dead and a town still left in awe from the destruction. Some would say this family was cursed. Some would say it was karma. But I will say that it ends in a tragedy with no winners and 2 innocent children dead, with the family still left wrecked by this tragic ending. Welcome to another episode of Murder in a Small Town. This story will take place in Whitley County, home of the Cumberland College, y'all. A town that bleeds red, literally. During my investigation, I just want y'all to know here, this is a side note, I uncovered a lot of crazy stuff. I'm talking about even down to the sheriffs, man. That is a whole story on its own. Like, that town is so full of corruption. And, like, I'm talking about the feds came in and investigated these folks, shut shit down. Everybody had to resign. New people came in. And from what I'm hearing now, it's pretty much back to the same BS. It's pretty wild if you ask me. But if you guys want a part 2 to this on all of the corruption, because what I uncovered was Jerry Taylor's lawyers was like Ron Reynolds and the judge was like Mr. Winchester. That is a whole fucking episode on its own. Not to mention, I went to federal prison, y'all, for those that don't know. And I had David Kersey and Warren Scovel. If you know, you know. And how about, ironically, while I was in prison, both of them blew their brains out. So I got a letter sent to me asking if I wanted to reopen my case on the basis of corruption through that. So, like, there is a whole bunch I can uncover and unload to y'all. Just hit me in the comments if you all want me to do a segment on that in itself, okay? All right, back to the story, y'all. Okay, guys, the story I'm about to bring to you is all allegedly, okay? Okay. Now, this is for fun. Fun. Alleged. Now, whether you loved or hated the former judge executive ex-jailer Jerry Taylor, you didn't have to spend much time around him to realize just how he became an elected official in the small town of Williamsburg, Kentucky. Most people would say that he was a funny, likable guy. But some would say he had a thing for, and I quote, young ones. But to better understand this man, let me just give you a little backstory, all right? Jerry was quoted saying this and telling this story multiple times. He would brag or kind of joke about his dad being a bootlegger. So I would say that he became familiar with crime and corruption at a young age, which, growing up watching that, I could see why it set the tone for what would end in his demise. By November of 1992, he had lost the race for judge executive after a 24-year reign. At this time, him and his administration was also being investigated by a special grand jury for some corruption, which was allegedly putting bridges on private property. That investigation would last 2 years, in which he would be found not guilty on any criminal charges. They didn't bring nothing up. Basically, what this boiled down to was they said he mishandled the county's money. In 1997, as the year came to an end, it was time to re-elect officials for this town. Mr. Taylor, would surprise a lot of people by running for jailer. This was a shock to many, considering that a lot of that town felt like he should have been in jail. My mother had spent a lot of time at that old jail in Whitley County. As a teen, I can remember hearing a lot of stories from different people that had been in and out of that jail. On my investigation and interviews that I did with some people who was nice enough to share their stories with me, had similar stories to my mother's. That the guards were just as corrupt. That Mr. Taylor would also sleep with the female inmates. He would actually take them out. It was a lot, y'all. Drugs was allowed to be dropped off in clothes and tampons to the women. If you had enough money, you could pay certain guards and get, like, special visits. Not to mention that the women guards was also sleeping with the men. It was basically kind of like a free-for-all. But I want to add a note, and I know this to be facts, because I can remember being, like, 14, 15 years old when my mom got her third DUI and she had to go pull some time over there. And I can remember one of my mom's friends asking me to take something in and dropping it off at the jail. And it was actually a pair of shoes. And she was adamant that she did not want me to look in the shoes. Guys, I know there were drugs there. And I know that when I stuck them in that thing, they took them damn things. I was like, oh my God. I remember telling my grandma, and I got the shit beat out of me for that. But that's just how easy it was. They turned a blind eye over there to everything, you all. Well, this man, Mr. Taylor, was the jailer in Whately County for 8 years. If you've ever been in that jail, then you know what the hell I'm talking about. During his time as jailer, he would also employ his son, Jerry Jr. At some point, things took a wild turn. They would end up getting themselves into a whole heap of a mess. Him and his son would eventually be brought up on charges of forgery, theft, selling drugs to inmates, promoting contraband, and one count of abuse of power, okay? Jerry would go on to resign and cite that he was having health issues. So, now, Jerry Taylor had 2 sons. He had Jerry Jr., which is the one that was working with him at the jail and got indicted, and then he had another son named Larry. Larry was actually married to Courtney. Courtney and Larry were married, and they went on to have 2 beautiful children, okay? 6 months before the shooting of her husband and 2 children, Courtney would receive a settlement of $264,000. Now, this is all allegedly that I got from an inside source. I cannot confirm or deny what she told me was real, but I'll let y'all sort through the bullshit, okay? All right. So, it was said that Larry and Courtney both were hooked on pain pills and had a pretty bad habit, that their marriage was in big trouble, and 6 months before she shot him, like I said, she got a $264,000 settlement. The source would go on to tell me that Larry was blowing through her money, and she was angry. She would go on to tell the police that she could not remember what happened. It would be said that, allegedly, that she made some brownies for her family that would contain some sleeping medication with the purpose of knocking them out. She apparently shot the husband first after a very heated argument over the money. I guess in her mind, she thought, this is it. They're not going to have a dad. They're not going to have a mom. And I don't know, I don't really know what was going on in her mind. But allegedly, I would have to think that, she didn't want them to also have to go through the terrible scandal and, them running her mom through the ground. So in her mind, she just sorted it out and decided it was best to off them. So that they didn't have to grow up without a mom or a dad. That's all I can figure on. But anyways, she apparently, after she shot the husband, she shot poor little Jolie, which was her 13-year-old next, in her bed and covered her up like she was sleeping. Jessie was the oldest, who I was told was allegedly out with her boyfriend during this time, and she came home and was led to believe that everybody was asleep. She proceeded to go on and get in her bed, where she was found shot and covered up to make it seem like she was also asleep. Let me say this. Jessie was the oldest. I think she was 18 at the time of the shooting. It would also be said that the next morning she just resumed business as normal. She went to a local drive-through tobacco barn to purchase cigarettes, went to make her run for her medication, and then back home to lay with the family that was slaughtered in the same house. My source also told me, allegedly, that the family gathered at Jerry Taylor, the father, for breakfast on Sundays. Courtney allegedly had told the family that they was sick and would not be attending. Something just didn't sit right with the family, so they decided to send someone to check. The cops were then called. On January the 13th of 2017, officers went to the home in Williamsburg, Kentucky, and after no response, they gained access by forcing their way in, where they were met by Courtney, who was aiming a 9mm handgun at them. Same 9mm handgun she shot her family with, which resulted in 2 shots being fired at Courtney from the officers. She would spend 2 weeks at the hospital, where she would confirm that she had no memory of the shootings. She did say she tried committing suicide, but it didn't work. She also